you done this before? No.
First time for everything, Roy.
Put your name right there. And put your name.
Hey, John. How's it going?
Good.
Fine.
Okay, guys.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
No,
Thanks.
just put your name under introduce.
Folks, we're ready.
What?
We're ready.
You're ready?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Good evening. We call to order the City of Mason Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Barna. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Fisher. Here. Commissioner Hagel.
Here.
Commissioner Hude. Commissioner Reese, Chairperson Reeser.
Here.
Secretary Sabadin.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Commissioner Waxman. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And for the record, Commissioners Waxman and Hude both gave notice. So, all right, moving right along. Item number 3 for tonight's agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 9th meeting. Commissioners, any comments, questions, changes that we need to address?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes of June 9th, 2015.
Been moved and seconded to accept the minutes as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. At this point in the meeting, we have an opportunity for people from the floor to address the Planning Commission. This would be any topic related to planning for the City of Mason. You'd have 3 minutes to come to the podium. This would be everything except for the public hearing that we're having this evening for the building addition. So if there's anybody that wants to present to the Planning Commission, this is your opportunity. Having nobody coming forward, we will move on to announcements. Commissioners, any announcements? Commissioner Scott.
Chairperson, I just wanted to offer congratulations to Director Haywood on his winning of the best period winner in the beard contest as part of the Mason Sesquicentennial celebrations. I'm not sure who this young man is here tonight. Whereas Chairperson Reeser stated David is a little lightheaded this evening.
So let's hear it for David. All right. Congrats, David. Any other announcements, Commissioners?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Scott and also specifically thank Vice Chair Sabadin and the Mason Fire Department, the Mason Firefighters Association for all the hard work that went into the fireworks display for the 4th of July. It was a wonderful display. And I want to also take a moment just to publicly thank everyone who participated in the 4th of July activities and supported the Mason Sesquicentennial over that weekend. There were a lot of people downtown, a lot of people at the parade, and we had some new events that were supported quite well, and it was just a fun weekend to be out and about in Mason. So thank you all to your support and your participation, and be on the lookout for more activities to come. We are gearing up for a full fall slate of Sesquicentennial activities and events. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, moving right along. This point in our meeting is the public hearing. Our public hearing tonight is to address the building addition at 131 East Maple Street, commonly known as the First Presbyterian Church. This goes along with resolution number 2015-03, resolution approving a preliminary and final site plan and special use permit to construct a 600-square-foot building addition to the existing First Presbyterian Church located at 131 East Maple Street. David, before we open up the public hearing, is there anything that you'd like to share with us to preface what's...
Sure. Just very briefly, the Presbyterian Church is proposing a 600-square-foot addition for the purpose of adding an elevator, improving the ADA access of the building, to lower the ramp so that entry to the building is at grade, And generally, their proposal meets the height, bulk, and density requirements of the zoning ordinance, with just a couple exceptions. The proposed addition does not meet the side yard setback standard for the O1 office zoning district, which requires 10 feet. The applicant's proposing an 8-foot, 10-inch setback. Also, the proposed addition, in combination with the existing structure, does not meet the maximum lot coverage requirement, which limits structures to a maximum of 35% coverage of the lot. The applicant's proposing 51%. What that means is that they would have to apply for a variance and be approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The resolution before you tonight includes a condition of approval that they receive that variance. So if they were to apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals and not be granted, then the special use permit and site plan approval would not be valid. But in the event that they are granted a variance, then your approval tonight would then become active. Construction schedule is anticipated for the fall of this year and be completed by the spring of 2016. There are no proposed changes to any utilities, streets, or other municipal services. And with that, you have an analysis of the standards of approval for site plan review and special use permit in your packet. And the Historic District Commission did approve the proposed facade change on June 22nd. So it has gone through that review and have been approved for that purpose. Otherwise, you have comments from the remaining agencies and city staff. With that, you have our recommendation for approval of Resolution 2015-03. And with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Well, before we do that, we want to open up for,
Sure.
give the, anybody, a spokesman from the church that wants to give us any kind of an additional overview, in addition to what David had to say, that would benefit for anyone that would be part of the public hearing. Before you do start to tell us, though, if you could go to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you. Now, we are recording this, so I can't let you get too far away from that microphone. So whatever you do have, if one of the people that are there with you could hold that up, that would be great. And then you could speak right into the microphone for us. Thank you.
An illustration we have this evening showing where the addition will be placed on the property in that southwest corner of the property. The existing church, as you folks all know, has been there since the turn of the century. The existing footprint already exceeds the allowable square foot or coverage of the site, so the variances were inevitable. But as we had stated, it's an addition for the purposes of various accessibility to the building. The exterior is designed to be compatible with the old stone construction that's there, and HDC did give us their approval. The church is just very excited to become fully accessible to all, and look forward to doing this project. The project will also include electrical upgrades to the building and mechanical upgrades to the building as well. Those components being interior and equipment housed on the roof of the building. We just wanted to give you a chance to kind of see what was planned. There's some landscaping that will be displaced and relocated as we do this construction of this addition. They requested that they go ahead and use it since it was a legal style project, so we simply relocated it back into the general vicinity that the original addition. And I don't know if you all have this in your packet or not. It does show the new addition, similar to the rest of the building, and I'll pass that along so that you can see it. If you have any questions, Stevens, of the members of the church, I can look it up to you on how to answer this.
All right, great. That will be all for right this moment. We'll go ahead and open for the public hearing. And if there's any questions, we'll revert back then. Thank you very much. All right, at this time, we'll open our public hearing. The way that we work with our public hearing is that anybody that does want to approach the Planning Commission, they can come up to the podium, and just like we already showed, state your name and address for the record, and then 3 minutes to go ahead and present to the Planning Commission. Public hearing is open. Having nobody being approached to the podium, public hearing is closed. Commissioners, before you, we have resolution number 2015-03, a resolution approving the preliminary and final plan, as we have already discussed. Do we have a resolution to introduce?
Yes, we do. Planning Commission Resolution Number 2015-03, a resolution approving a preliminary and final site plan and special use permit to construct a 600-square-foot building addition to the existing First Presbyterian Church located at 131 East Maple Street. Introduced by Hagel, second by Barna.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, if somebody wants to consider the resolution read, I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we consider Planning Commission Resolution 2015-03 as having been read.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any questions for Mr. Haywood or for the architects?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just for clarification for me, I guess. Sorry. I guess I'm not clear on what this special use permit is for.
I think I actually.
And if it's in our packet, I apologize.
Yeah,
I missed it.
yeah.
I can't find it.
Well, the property is zoned O1 office, and it permits religious institutions and places of worship by special use permit. You can't make a modification to a use that requires a special use permit without having a special use permit in place. They've never had one before, so this is bringing them up to speed now that they're looking to expand.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I just have a clarification. Sam Biebler's comments. He says, I do believe either of these projects will have any effect. I think that he meant I do not believe. Just wanted to read that in.
Yeah, that's intended to read. I do not believe, as project is not involving municipal sanitary sewer. So,
Commissioners, any other questions? All right, all in favor of resolution number 2015-03, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Good luck with your addition, folks. Thank you very much. Item number 7, regular business. Resolution number 2015-04, a resolution approving a preliminary and final site plan for the construction of a 4,000 square foot salt storage building at 300 East Kip Road. David, do you want to share anything on Resolution 2015-04?
Sure. The applicant, John Fisher, is asking for preliminary and final site plan review to construct a 4,000 square foot temporary hoop house shed for salt storage on property located at 300 East Kip Road. This is the former pallet yard property at the corner of Kip and South Barnes, for the purpose of storing salt, basically road salt, for the Anderson Fisher Company. The structure in question is a temporary hoop house structure. It's basically stacked concrete blocks, almost like barricade-type blocks, and then a metal hoop structure mounted on the top of that, and fabric pulled over the top of that to keep it dry. It will be on a asphalt pad. There are no footings associated with the building. The building could be disassembled at any time, and that's essentially the basics of it. The structure proposed location is in an area of the site that appears to be adequately screened from the road, and there don't appear to be any objections from any of the area agencies that had an interest in, or that were distributed, that may have an interest in reviewing the proposal. The total site area is 26.26 acres. The structure is an unoccupied building and would generate essentially no parking demand. No utilities associated with the proposal, and the proposed facility would not be available to the public, only to the business using it. Given the overall size of the site and the distance to the nearest water body, that being the old gravel pit pond, about 300 feet to the east, there doesn't appear to be any impact from an environmental perspective. DEQ did not respond to our notice, so I would assume that there would be no issues associated with that. So with that, we have a recommendation for approval of Resolution 2015-04, and I'll take any questions or comments at this time.
Commissioners, any questions, comments? Commissioner Fisher.
Just the same one from Sam Biebler. I assume that he meant the same, that he doesn't have any issue.
I would make that same assumption since it's not affecting the municipal sanitary system.
Mr. Sullivan.
I have a problem with the word temporary. Define temporary. Is there, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, is it still temporary? Is there a definition of temporary?
I think temporary in this sense is that it can be disassembled and reused somewhere else as opposed to being demolished as a building with footings and a foundation, that kind of thing. And it's not permanently affixed to the ground. This thing can literally be picked up and moved at any time.
Probably not the cement blocks. Commissioner Barna.
I have a question about what prevents the salt from, water getting in there and running down to the pond or getting into the water system. How does that work?
I will attempt to answer it, and then I'll have Mr. Fisher.
I was going to say, we have
answer
a representative from the property here, so we could.
I'll just, as he's coming up to the podium, I'll just summarize.
Mr. Fisher, would you like to come up to the podium for a moment? That
the salt is on a impervious surface, and then the structure is covered, so there'd be no rainwater getting into it. That, from the description of the proposal, I'll let Mr. Fisher answer.
Mr. Fisher, if you could give your name and address for the record, and then we'd have a question for you, please.
John Fisher, just 225.
Thank you. A question from Commissioner Barna. Go ahead, Commissioner Barna, if you want to ask the question.
What would prevent the salt from potentially getting wet and having the runoff run into the pond?
The state requires that when you build a pad, that it all fits back in, that all water can run off. So it requires impervious surface. The hoop, which is in essence a plastic cover, is on the outside of the block, so when the water hits that, it goes to the outside of the block. The pad is elevated such that water that runs off into the lake. And so it's designed to vacuum and dump inside of it, keep the salt in, and build the salt inside of it. It's outside of it. And all the water sheds away from it, and the building can pull it back.
What's that? Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Fisher? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any other questions for David? No. Do we have a resolution to introduce? Please. Well, yes, if you want. Yes. We have a resolution. Yes. One moment, please. Resolution number 2015-04. The resolution approving the preliminary and final site plan for construction of a 4,000 square foot salt building at 300 East Kip Road.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Brown, Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
I move to consider Planning Commission Resolution 2015-04 as having been read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 2015-04 as read. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Now do we have a motion to a resolution to introduce?
Yes, we do. Planning Commission Resolution number 2015-04, a resolution approving a preliminary and final site plan for the construction of a 4,000 square foot temporary hoop house shed at 300 East Kip Road, introduced by Hagel, second by Barna.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Commissioners, any other additional questions? All in favor of resolution number 2015-04, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Additionally, under regular business, item B, report on the medical marijuana ordinance subcommittee activity. Mr. Haywood or a designated member of the subcommittee want to speak and tell us what's going on? You don't have to put David on the spot all the time. David, all eyes are facing towards you. Sorry, buddy. I tried.
Just very briefly, the committee met after the last Planning Commission meeting in June and assigned basically staff three tasks. One was to get a legal opinion from the city attorney regarding drug-free school zones and how that applies or doesn't apply or is in conflict with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. I do have a legal opinion that I received, I think it was just yesterday or very recently, on that matter, which essentially says, the question was, can we establish a distance from any school or park or other type place based on the drug-free school zone, state law or even federal law? Does that conflict with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that says basically if you have a card, you are immune from prosecution? So those two things are in direct conflict. And the attorney essentially said you can't prohibit a patient or caregiver. You can't exclude them from that zone. So, because it would be in conflict with the Medical Marijuana Act. That was, because when we started to talk about that concept, I wondered if you could actually apply that to someone with a medical marijuana card in either category. Essentially, the answer is no, whether you apply the state law or the federal law. And even furthermore, maybe not furthermore, there's if it materially restricts medical marijuana use within such zone, there is the potential for litigation in that instance. So I guess the answer is we can't do that. And I'm not even sure that we can establish any zone that prohibits it. So,
we were going to.
Well, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about there's a possibility. We hadn't made any decisions, but we were talking about that. And other municipalities are using that. I don't know how much they're enforcing it, but so we have some more talking to do and some considerations regarding that opinion now. So we will continue on. And the other two tasks were to just do a real basic rough draft of different distances from those types of land uses, which we did do, and we can show you what that would have looked like. But now it doesn't look like that's very relevant at this point, but give us something to do tonight. And then lastly, what was the other task we had to do? Oh, prepare for our public input meeting. We're looking at we're looking at the 29th of July. So it's about a week, a little over a week and a half. And if there aren't any major conflicts, if anybody can think of any particular reasons why that night would not work, I think we're going to announce that tomorrow. We are meeting tonight on this issue, and we'll report back after our public input session and give a report out in the August Planning Commission meeting.
So right now, it looks like the only thing that we can keep from happening is no drive-through windows, because that would take a special use permit.
Yeah, I mean, we may still, caregivers, we may still be able to regulate based on zoning, but it doesn't sound like we can just pick a distance and prohibit them. So we still have some, we've still got to, I mean, we just got this, so we still have to kind of chew on it a little bit and try to understand what it really means.
All right. Well, great job, you guys, for meeting as regularly as you have been, and do keep us posted. We'll be interested to hear how that goes, especially with the public hearing coming up, the public meeting, input meeting coming up. Any other comments, questions, people from the subcommittee that want to chime in?
Mr. Chair.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you. I just have two questions for David and the committee. The first is not to circumvent whatever report you will make to the Planning Commission, but would we be able to get a copy of the legal opinion from the city attorney just as background information? Okay. And the second question I had is the meeting on the 29th, is that actually a Planning Commission public hearings or just really a forum type of event?
It would be purely for the basis of generating and receiving public opinion, public input to help draft an ordinance. The required public hearing would follow after an ordinance was drafted and vetted through the Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, David. Moving right along, item C is a report on the Sub-Area Planning Committee activity. Any member of that committee want to speak up and tell us what's going on with that committee? David, you're reaching too fast. You didn't give anybody a chance. You're not getting a little bit busy.
We know the answer.
You're not getting a little bit busy, are you, with all of these committees and all that you have going on right now?
On that note, I don't have anything to report on that committee, and I'd like to respectfully request that we postpone that project until such time that staff has more time to devote to it. I find if I try to do these two projects at the same time, neither one gets done very well. And even with our intern, Mr. Girdwood, it's still a chore to stay on top of it, let alone add another thing to the pile. So with that, I'm duly requesting postponement of that until we'll back down to one project.
Anybody have a problem with that? You can, and then you're signing right up to be the lead, so go ahead. Not to put any pressure on anybody.
Guess I'll take my hand down.
Well, David, I think that's a very valid request with everything that's going on right now, and so, it's something, let's just go ahead and table that, and get through with what we already have going with the medical marijuana ordinance subcommittee, because we do have some deadlines coming forward with that. I'm not going to say that the sub-area planning committee activity isn't important, but it is not as pressing as some of the other things that we do have on the docket right now. So,
I do have one question.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Thank you. I probably should know this since I'm on the committee, but if you would, Mr. Haywood, refresh my memory, we did not actually send out intent to plan notices yet.
No, we did not.
Okay, so we're not under any sort of timeline at this
No.
point. Great.
But thank you for getting that clarified for everybody, though. So, all right, with no other questions, comments on the sub-area planning committee, it's on hiatus right now. We'll give you 2 weeks to get caught up on everything else. I mean, we'll give you a little bit of time to get caught up on everything else. All right, commissioners, unfinished business. Commissioner Scott.
This may be new business, unfinished. It's kind of in between. Questions for Director Haywood pertaining to the AutoZone site plan approval that we did back in February, I think, springtime. Two things I noticed with the development going on. One, I recall that the site plan approval was provided with some kind of conditions regarding both site lighting and preventing runoff to adjacent properties. And I don't see that any curb or gutter has been constructed. Do you happen to recall what the specifics were on that, or do you know of any changes that may have occurred? And actually, as a second or perhaps follow-up question, we also had discussion about access to or from both of the adjacent properties, the north and the south. The site plan included access from just the south property, and there was discussion about having modifications made to their design to allow traffic to flow from the north as well.
Yeah, that particular site plan actually was not designed to prevent water from their site going anywhere else. It was actually designed to actually facilitate water from their site to the parking lot to the north. So it's made to sheet flow. In fact, we had a condition of approval that they had to get permission from the adjacent property owner to do that, which they did do. And that's where the water drained already. That's where it historically has flowed, and they have not done anything to exacerbate that. In fact, they were converting a significant portion of the property, not significant, a portion of the property, more than there was before, to pervious surfaces. So they've in fact, quote unquote, improved the situation, and that it is graded to facilitate all of that water toward that direction. I've been on site at least twice, and it is graded. It has a significant grade. I doubt any water. From the looks of it, if it all fills incorrectly, no water will leave the site to the south or west. So there has been some runoff, some erosion during construction, but I assume that will be settled once everything's grown in and stabilized. Did that answer all of your questions you had?
It answers the runoff. What about the access?
I know that it was a future connection. I think I can't remember if we allowed them to postpone their installment until the future was installed, but I can take a look at that and double check to make sure that they're building that facility as approved.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott and David. Any other unfinished business? Moving right along, new business, commissioners. No new business. Correspondence. Should have received the Planning and Zoning News April and May 2015. Before you leave here tonight, you'll have that. Anything else for correspondence? Any of the commissioners? May receive any mail on anything? All right. Next will be liaison reports. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, you are up on deck first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. City Council's been very busy over the past several weeks. Just to share with you a few highlights, one thing that's important to note that the City Council approved the updates to the Directory of Charges, and most notable within that is actually an increase to the water sewer rates that went into effect on July 1st. So you can see those on the city website, and it's a nominal increase, basically a cost of business adjustment or inflationary adjustment. I believe it was about 1.5%, but I'd have to double check the specifics in the directory for that. The City Council also authorized a contract with the Michigan Department of Transportation to begin work on the Kipp Road project. That includes box light signals at both the intersection of Kipp and Jefferson and also Kipp and Cedar, as well as sidewalk installations along Kipp, which I believe will go all the way out to 127. So hopefully the work on that will begin this summer, and that is essentially a contract through MDOT. The city also updated its Freedom of Information Act policies. The state recently passed a statute updating state restrictions on that in terms of what the city can charge and who is the FOIA coordinator and that sort of thing. And so in compliance with the state statute, the city updated its FOIA policies effective July 1st, and our city clerk serves as the FOIA coordinator, I believe. And finally, with regard to legislation, the City Council had the first reading of an ordinance to essentially prohibit the unnecessary summoning of emergency providers, including fire, and disobeying firefighters within the city of Mason, and also the raising of a false fire alarm. We will still have the second reading of that proposed ordinance at our next meeting coming this Monday on the 20th. But this was something that Fire Chief Minshaw raised to the attention of administration and subsequently to the council. It seems like a no-brainer. We were kind of surprised we didn't have it on the books, but essentially would put in place a fine and some enforcement mechanisms to prohibit false alarms, because that does take up city resources, city times when we have to make unnecessary calls. I don't think that there is a preponderance of unnecessary calls, but it's something that would be good to have on the books nonetheless. Finally, with regard to our city administration transition, effective our June 15th meeting, the City Council met in a special session to appoint an acting city administrator. That is someone that the community knows fairly well. Mr. Pat Price was essentially called out of retirement and asked to serve as our acting city administrator until we have selected a permanent city manager. In addition to that, the City Council is also moving forward with soliciting a professional consultant or a professional consultant firm to help with the recruiting and hiring process for a new city administrator. Specifically with that, we have not selected a firm as of yet, but there is a tentative meeting planned for a tentative special meeting planned for 6:30 on Monday for the council to hear a presentation from the Michigan Municipal League. The Michigan Municipal League has a executive search team or executive search process, and they are the only municipal organization that provides that service within the state. Outside of that, we would have to go with independent consultation services or private consultation services that may have worked with the city. But the MML provides that service, and they are an actual municipal organization. So we'll hear a presentation from that, and then potentially during our regular meeting hold some discussion about whether or not the city should contract with the Municipal League in order to execute the search process. Finally, it is our hope that once we select the consultation firm, that we would then post the position and begin the process of accepting applicants and weeding down those applicants to a number that the council would interview and also have some public input on that process as well. And our goal is to hopefully have a new city administrator in place by the end of September, as our current acting city administrator would like to be done by the end of September. So we're grateful to Mr. Price for working with the city during the summer, and we're also excited about moving forward. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments regarding any of the items that I've mentioned or anything that I haven't mentioned tonight.
Commissioners, any questions or comments from Mayor Pro Tem Brown? I guess you had everything all laid out and perfectly able to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, have you caught your breath back yet so you can tell us what's going on in your world as the director?
I have. Here are the planning and zoning news from April and May. So we'll pass those down, take one, and enjoy. Not a whole lot new to report. Obviously, we've talked about a few issues here, and many of the things that I'm involved with we cover during the meeting anyway. However, I do want to talk about a project that I've been participating in through Tri-County Regional Planning Commission. As you may be aware, they adopted as a recommended policy the Regional Growth Plan. That was an effort that was underway in the late 90s and has been available for communities to consult with and implement as needed. And it's essentially kind of a smart growth kind of tactic to focus growth in existing developed areas such as Lansing, City of Mason, and that kind of thing. And so the idea is to enhance the existing built environment, preserve farmland to the extent possible, and provide efficiencies in operation and cost for municipal services, that being everywhere from water and sewer to police and fire and whatnot. The idea is that the more value you can add in adding density of somewhat and redeveloped value, you can optimize your infrastructure costs by not continually extending them out into suburban growth. Although eventually things grow outward, but in the interim they can grow inward in value. So as part of that project, as a means to accelerate the implementation of that project regionally, Tri-County reached out to Portland State University in Oregon. I think I mentioned this project in the past, but it's been kind of quick to develop. They reached out to them, and they have a funding mechanism to provide consultation to the Tri-County regional planning in the entire region for those who want to participate. What they do is a series of land use studies and kind of develop a work plan to try to help implement policies that will ensure the regional growth plan objectives are implemented. And I was asked to participate in kicking that off, so I flew out to Portland, Oregon to meet with all of the folks that are involved in that program. It's called the Urban Sustainability Accelerator. And again, the idea is to help accelerate sustainable planning in your region. So I kind of serve on that committee for Tri-County Regional Planning. So a series of us went out, Brian McGrain, Judy Brown-Clark, Brent Forsberg, a developer, Janine Sino from the Health Department, myself, and Julie Powers from the Greater Lansing Housing Coalition. We're all out there to try to glean whatever we could out of their programs and bring back some ideas to try to help implement this. And this is going to be a year-long effort. They kind of focused in on Mason and said, you guys are kind of primed for this type of smart growth, and you've got everything kind of going for you. You've got an dense urban core. You've got a township to the north that doesn't want any development, so that could serve as your farmland somewhat preservation. You have a township to the south that wants to grow, but incrementally. We've already have a past history of working together. And it's kind of prime for kind of setting up a future development pattern that everybody can kind of agree to. So it's the very beginning. It's something that might be subject to change. And, might be something that everybody just throws out the door. But I'd hate to lose an opportunity like this where we have basically free funding to help us plan for the future. It was quick to come, so I kind of jumped on it. And so far, there's no harm in trying, and we'll keep you informed as we move forward. Obviously, nothing's going to be done without anybody's approval, but it is a means to begin to sit down at the table and start talking about how we view our region. So I want to give you just a little bit of background about my trip. We spent Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Portland, and we toured. We went on several tours looking at how they manage the growth in that area. Portland proper is just over 600,000 people in an area I think probably the size of Lansing regional area. There's a lot of people in a small space. The regional area of Portland is about 1.2 million, and they were a fraction of that 35 years ago. So 35 years ago, they were much like Lansing, somewhat struggling, really trying to find investment in their community to add value to what they have. And they chose statewide at that point to adopt urban growth boundaries. And at the time, they were a fixed line. They didn't really plan to move them much. And over a series of time, they decided that wasn't feasible, and that it's better to have a flexible line so that every 6 years they reevaluate it. Every 20 years they can change it. So, and every time they study it, they have to prove that they have space within it for 20 years worth of growth. If they have 20 years worth of growth inside that line, then they can't move the line. Then they have areas outside of the line that they say these will never develop ever. This is a statewide law. So a very different approach to development, but one that they drew the line on 35 years ago, and it's paying off now. It took 35 years for it to fully develop, and it wasn't an easy thing. It was very contentious. Obviously, there are people on either side of the line that feel like they don't want to grow on one side of the line and want to grow on the other side of the line, and that's the way it works. But the good thing is the line isn't fixed forever. So, but it's a model, and we got to meet with a lot of different folks that were involved in planning from the city and township, or not, they don't have townships, county, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So all of those people will be at our disposal over the upcoming year. Of course, this is all worked through Tri-County Regional Planning, but they're looking at helping us plan in the upcoming year as a separate individual project of the overall regional plan. So I guess more to come. It's not like we're bringing a growth boundary here, but in a sense, we kind of have one through our 425 agreements and utility agreements with the township. We kind of have at least a growth plan. It's not a line, but it's a growth plan, and we're going to hopefully utilize them in cooperation with the townships to see if we can't improve that plan that helps everybody's interests. So anyway, just wanted to report back that to you. It was a wonderful trip. The Portland has grown and improved quite a bit, and the city is gorgeous. It's very dense, though. It's lots and lots of people. You don't always feel it, though. It's odd. Lots of people, but there aren't a lot of cars on the road. They have 600,000 people, but there aren't gobs and gobs and gobs of cars on the road. So it's certainly focused on walking and transit. And I think that was one of the other work plans that were discussed was improving the bus rapid transit system in Lansing, making a concerted effort to get the regional policymakers at the table together to talk about how to promote reinvestment in core communities and so on. So lots of ideas we're throwing on the table, and we'll keep developing those to see what we can do to continue to spur growth in our region from a value-based and not necessarily a quantity-based. And we'll keep you posted as they move forward.
Correct.
Took lots of pictures, so hopefully in August I'll bring lots of pictures to show some of the things that I saw. Some lots of ideas from big to little tactical stuff. So
Nice. Well, you said that they chose that Mason would be an ideal one to work with. Was there anything that stood out? I mean, key points as to what they saw with what we have here, and some things that maybe we're already doing, especially like with the planning group, or anything in general.
yeah, two things struck them. One, the courthouse square, not unlike the downtown Lansing, it's the same thing. They said in Oregon they don't have squares like that. Usually it's strip development or it's just a main street kind of thing, but they don't have historic squares. So they tell me. They may have one here and there, but they said they generally just don't have anything like that. So they said from that perspective you have such a unique core to build on that, not unlike how their farmland is quite sensitive and a lot of development pressure there. They don't have farmland like we do. So they have to protect that vigorously or it's going to go away quickly. So we have these urban cores that they don't have, that they say if you don't protect that, that's going to go away, not unlike how Detroit and Flint, grew so quickly, and without controlled growth, the inner city just falls away behind it. And not necessarily if that's going to happen here, but they said you have to actively protect that. You can't just rely on the fact that it's going to be there forever. So that's one of the things that they brought up. And the other thing that they brought up was, even though your past agreement, your past working relationship may or may not have been positive, it's better than having no working relationship at all. So we do have things in place, and we have some 425 agreements that spell out how and where and when, not necessarily when, but where we are to annex next. That the township won't, in certain areas near the city, and it's in our master plan. There's a map in our master plan that we developed during the last master plan update. Basically outlines where it's acceptable to the township to annex next before any other places. And then in exchange, we would agree to extend utilities into the township to certain areas. So they said that's really kind of similar to what they're doing out there, and that's prime for kind of solidifying. And it's been now, I think those were done in the late 80s, early 90s, so it's been some time since those agreements were in place, and it's probably time to start looking at that again and make sure that that's still valid, or if there's anything we want to improve on from there. So those are some of the two main reasons why they thought it would be perfect for that. We have a township that doesn't want to develop, so why not use that as an asset?
Exactly. Great. Commissioners, any other comments or questions for David? Hey, Commissioner Barner.
So, in Oregon, if they don't have townships, then how do the folks who aren't in a city advocate for their own planning?
They would fall under either, if there are any outlying cities or small villages, they would have their own, like us, would have their own representation. If they fell outside of that, they would be falling with the county. So there are no townships beyond cities and villages.
Interesting.
And the rural agricultural land wanted this as much as the cities wanted this. It survived 35 years of litigation. The people there really want to protect their farmland from development. And that seems to be a really strong interest. And basically the only way to do that is to slow down the rate of growth. And the more you do that, the more that the agricultural land becomes an asset to the cities and villages near them. And the more that becomes an asset, the more internally it starts to build on each other. Because if you can only rebuild and infill first, that adds value to that city. And it was really slow. It just simmered for a couple decades, and then just in the last 10 years, Portland has just exploded because it reached that critical mass of investment to kind of tip the scale a little bit. And they still have their issues, and they still have their neighborhoods that are rough, but they're seeing investment and population boom right now like they've never seen. And I think few American cities are seeing. And they're doing it at a density rate that supports their public transportation, supports their bus system, supports light rail, supports their cabs. Bicycling is huge there. So the more people you have, and the more jobs you have in close proximity, the easier that is for that to happen. Climate helps a little bit too, but
I think we're all set. Thank you, David. Before we adjourn, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, you had a comment?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In lieu of not having an administrator's report, I did see something come across my email today from the city that I think is worth noting. Apparently, there's going to be some water main work tomorrow, and so that residents living on Steel Street and Maple Street will actually have no water between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Due to the water main tie-ins that will be worked on. So DPW is going to be out all day trying to speed up that process, and the goal is to certainly get the water back on earlier than 5 o'clock, but certainly residents on Maple Street and Steel Street will be affected with regard to that tomorrow. Thank you.
Get their bathtubs and sinks filled then. David, one more comment?
I did want to relay that the interim manager will not be attending during the interim time planning commission meeting. So I guess Mayor Pro Tem Brown and I will have to tag team on making sure we cover the council city as a whole interests. So, but yeah, so he will not be in attendance during this time.
It's a pretty big job. You two can handle it, can't you?
We'll try.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, thank you much for your time tonight and your contribution to the city. We're adjourned.